Hello everybody, welcome to Contentment Guide Astrology. I am Michelle. Today's video is going to be about quite a long dance that's going to play out in the sky with the Mercury retrograde and also with Saturn and with Jupiter. So welcome to this video, welcome to my channel. Please like, please share, please subscribe. It helps me and it helps my business to grow. I really appreciate everyone that are here, and I would love to hear about your experiences with this Mercury retrograde. So a Mercury retrograde will influence different people differently as per your personal chart. And it will definitely influence you more if you are in some kind of Mercury perfection here. So you can find out, so you're welcome to contact me if you want to know how these aspects are going to influence you between now and the beginning of 2025. So Mercury is technically going to be retrograde between 26 November and 15 December. But with the Mercury shadow period, the shadow period starts on the 7th of November already at 6 degrees of Sagittarius. And then the shadow period ends on the 2nd of January 2025 at 22 degrees of Sagittarius. And the reason that this is quite a significant Mercury retrograde is because of a long-standing opposition to Jupiter and also a long-standing square to Saturn. And what makes this very transformational is the fact that between Mercury and Jupiter, there is what we call mutual reception. And what this means is that normally Jupiter in Gemini is the furthest away from its home sign of Sagittarius. And Mercury is the furthest away from its home sign of Gemini. But because they are in each other's houses, it makes this opposition energy more mutual and more flowing than it would usually be, because they have the opportunity to communicate from house to house, and it just makes these energies slightly easier to deal with because of the mutual reception. So I'm going to give some specific houses for all the signs by rising sign at the end of this video, so you can stay tuned for that. So I would like to give some very basic significations of the planets firstly. So Mercury is about our mind, our intellect, the way we think, how we communicate, things we use to communicate, like our devices and emails. It's about commerce and business, travel and transport, and also adaptability. Mercury is that energy that can just as easily be in the upper world and the underworld. It has that ability to transcend the known and the unknown. So that is quite an amazing energy to work with when it comes to Mercury. And then Jupiter. Jupiter is about growth, expansion. It's about our faith. It's about our belief systems. It's around justice, and it's also around opportunities. And then Saturn is often very misunderstood. Saturn is like a membrane or a glass ceiling. It signifies a boundary, but it equally signifies the dissolving of that same boundary. So it kind of holds the opposite, it holds tension between opposites. So it holds the tension between an ideal version of something and the reality of that same thing. Or it holds the tension between what we know and what we don't know yet. But this perceived barrier can be transcended. And depending on how we work with Saturn, there is such an amazing mystical transformation possible. Saturn teaches us where to say no. Saturn can sometimes feel heavy and it can feel like it drags us down. But that isolation is also to teach us wisdom, how to stand on our own 2 feet, and how to really work with our inner selves in any given situation. So, so on the 7th of November, we are entering the Mercury shadow period, and this is in the sign of Sagittarius. And then we're going to have Mercury square Saturn 3 times. So this is a very progress-orientated period between now and the beginning of January, because we're going to have certain experiences, and so that's why it's nice to take note of the dates that I give you, because Mercury is going to pass once, it's going to retrograde, and it's going to pass a 3rd time. And by the end of the shadow period only will we know what we have transformed during this retrograde period. So a retrograde is always anything with a we are rethinking, we are replanning, we are re-evaluating things in a certain part of our lives. So Mercury is going to square Saturn firstly on the 12th of November, then again on the 6th of December, and again on the 27th of December. At the same time, it's going to be exactly opposite opposite Jupiter on the 17th of November, then again on the 4th of December, and again on the 26th of December. So you can see the first 2 dates are not that closely linked, but Mercury squaring Saturn and Mercury opposing Jupiter are forming T-squares between the 4th and the 6th of December and the 26th and the 27th of December. So these energies are very much linked, and opposition squares and T-squares are more of challenging energies where we are dealing with opposing forces, and it's a more transformative energy in the sense that there's something that's pushing us forward. So this is a real transformation in terms of these areas of our charts. And this T-square energy is actually happening between air, fire, and water signs. So there's also a rebalancing and a recalibration happening between air, fire, and water in these signs that we are working with. So Mercury is retrograding in Sagittarius, Jupiter is in Gemini, and Saturn is in Pisces. So again, around a mutual reception. So Mercury and Jupiter are more able to communicate with each other because they are in each other's houses. So there's a more flowing aspect to this, even though it is an opposition. And then the square to Saturn. Saturn in Pisces can be quite a challenging energy because it can be a heavy, watery feeling, and learning about new boundaries and ceilings and perceived membranes that we have to break free from in more emotional areas of our lives. So this is quite an interesting time, and it's going to be very interesting for me personally to work with these energies. And I would love to hear from you how this plays out in your life. If you take note of these dates between 12 November, 4 to 6 December, and 26, 27 December. So I'm going to give now the sign-based significations by rising sign. So I'm going to start with Aries. So Aries, for you, the Mercury retrograde is happening excuse me, in your 9th house. So there's a retrograde and a rethinking, rebalancing and replanning happening for you in the areas of religion, faith, higher learning, foreign travel, and belief systems. And the opposition to Jupiter is happening in the 3rd house. This is your mind, your thinking, your intellect. It's local travel, your local surroundings, your neighborhood, the area between your home and your work. And then Saturn is in your 12th house, which is the unconscious mind and more unconscious ways of how we are not aware of our intellect yet. So for Aries, there's a total recalibration here between your thinking, your higher thinking, and your unconscious mind. So this is actually a very interesting placement for Aries. And so next we have Taurus rising. So for you, Mercury retrograde is happening in your 8th house. 8th house is about transformation. It's about how we share things with other people, how we share resources, money, and inner and outer resources with other people. It's very much about how we transform ourselves. It can be a literal or a metaphorical death in terms of transformation in general. So the Mercury retrograde is going to help you rebalance and finding new ways forward of how you deal with resources and karma in terms of sharing with other people. And Jupiter is opposite in your 2nd house, which is to do with your own resources. And Saturn is in the 11th house, which is all about groups and colleagues, benefactors, and how those people show up in your life. So for Taurus, this is all about resources and connections and sharing of resources between the 2nd, the 8th, and 11th houses. And then we have Gemini rising. So for Gemini rising, the Mercury retrograde is happening in your 7th house. This is a rebalancing of one-on-one relationships of all kinds, romantic partnerships, business partnerships, one-on-one clients, all of these close relationships. And then the Jupiter is opposite in the 1st house, which is all about you, who you are, your body, your mind, how you relate to the world. And then we have Saturn in the 10th house, which is all about how you are seen in the world out there. it's your career, it's how you are seen in public life. So there is a recalibration here happening between you in the first house, your close relationships in the seventh house, and how you are seen out there in public life for Gemini. And then we have Cancer rising. And Cancer rising, the Mercury retrograde is happening for you in the sixth house. The sixth house is about work, it is about health, it is about daily habits, how you plan your day and how you live your day from minute to minute, from hour to hour. And then Jupiter is opposite in the 12th house, which again is to do with your unconscious mind and more unseen things in your life. Then Saturn is in your 9th house of beliefs and higher learning and travel. So for Cancer, there is a recalibration here between health, physical health, mental health, between daily habits and unconscious habits that can come to light, and your belief systems. So a big calibration happening in these areas for Cancer. And then for Leo rising, you have the Mercury retrograde happening in your 5th house. And the 5th house is called the house of joy. It is the house of creativity. It is those things that we do to enjoy ourselves, like hobbies and other creative things. It can be a house of romance. And Jupiter is opposite in the 11th house, which is all about how you relate to groups, to colleagues, to benefactors, and to your hopes and wishes in your life. And Saturn is in your 8th house at the moment, which is resources shared with other people. So for Leo rising, there is a recalibration happening here between your creativity in the world, how you share resources with others, and how you relate to groups of people and other people that benefit you in your life. And for Libra rising, you have the Mercury retrograde happening in your 3rd house. And 3rd house is the mind, the intellect, it's communication, it's your neighborhood and your immediate surroundings. Jupiter is opposite in the 9th house, which is international travel, it is higher learning, it is your belief systems, religion and faith. And Saturn is in the 6th house, which is all about your daily habits and your health. So there is a recalibration happening here between your thinking process, your higher learning, and your daily habits, and how you can find a new way to work with these going forward. And for Scorpio rising, you have the Mercury retrograde happening in your 2nd house of your personal resources. And Jupiter is opposite in the 8th house of shared resources and transformation. And Saturn is in the 5th house, the house of joy and creativity and romance and sexuality. So for Scorpio risings, there's a recalibration happening here between your resources, how you use your resources, how you share resources with others, and how you come into your joy with these things. And for Sagittarius rising, The retrograde is happening in Mercury retrograde is happening in your first house. And opposite you, you have Jupiter in the seventh house. And you have Saturn in the fourth house of home and family and ancestors, physical home where you feel at home. So for Sagittarius rising, there's a recalibration happening here between who you are now, how you relate to your personal one-on-one relationships, and how you bring this together in terms of ancestors, your home, where you live, where you spend your time after work. Calibration happening between those areas. And so for Capricorn rising, the Mercury retrograde is happening in your 12th house of the unconscious mind. So there's a rethinking here about how you work with your unconscious things, with your mental health. And Jupiter is opposite in the 6th house, which is your house of work, your daily habits, and your health. Then Saturn is in the 3rd house of your mind, your intellect, your thinking habits, and your environment. So there's a recalibration happening here for Capricorns between daily habits, unconscious things and mental health, and the 3rd house of your mind and your thinking. So there's going to be a new way developing for you of how you think, how you deal with your daily environment, and how you deal with more unconscious things and mental health matters. And then for Aquarius rising, you have Mercury retrograding in your 11th house, and Jupiter is opposite in the 5th house. Now, Mercury retrograde in the 11th house is about groups, it's about colleagues, it's about your wishes, it's about benefactors. And Jupiter is opposite in the 5th house, which is the house of joy. It is romance, it is hobbies, it's creativity. And then Saturn is in your 2nd house of your personal resources. So there is a recalibration happening between how you deal with personal resources, where you find your joy, maybe in romance, and how you relate to groups of people and benefactors in these matters. And then we have Pisces rising. So for Pisces rising, the Mercury retrograde is happening in your 10th house of your public life. This is about your career. This is about how you are seen out there in the world. So there's a recalibration happening here for you in how you are seen out there in public life. And Jupiter is creating the tension opposite in the 4th house of house and home and family and ancestors. And then Saturn is in the 1st house of you, who you are and your body. So for Pisces rising, there's a recalibration happening between who you are now, between who you are in the family, where you live your home life, and also your career and how you are seen by others out there in the world. So this period of transformation with the Mercury retrograde is even more significant because we now have Saturn has just stationed on the 15th, or is going to station, depending on when you watch this, is stationing on the 15th of November and then starting to move forward again after its retrograde. So with Saturn, it's already bringing in new ways of experiencing our yeses or nos, our boundaries, our perceived glass ceilings, and the tension between how we deal with opposites in our lives. So there's already a new view coming in here with Saturn, and with Mercury passing opposite Jupiter and squaring Saturn 3 times, there's going to be such a change in our way of thinking and communicating, and even just how we see things at the end of this retrograde period. So I wish you all the best for this period of change, and I would love to know where this is happening for you in your chart, and if you are already seeing flavors of these things coming through into your life. I know I certainly am seeing some flavors pushing into these areas already. So thank you for being here. Please like, please share, please subscribe, please comment. I love to hear from you, and I will see you again next time.